So like I said, this week is on operating systems and file management. A lot of this stuff we've already covered in a few ways. So there's going to be a bit of refresher, and I'm going to, instead of going through this entire PowerPoint from start to finish like I have been, I'm going to instead go over like some demonstrations of things that it's talking about. Because throughout this, we're going to be talking about not only the differences between different types of operating systems, but also how to personalize your device to make it so you can work better, you have a more comfortable environment, and also how to manage files and folders and keep yourself organized. Windows, Mac, whatever operating system you're using has plenty of tools for you to do just that, and we're going to go over it today. So getting started with the different types of operating systems, something to make as a distinction first is the difference between system software and an operating system. In short, an operating system is system software, but that relationship doesn't go the other way around. System software is not an operating system. So in general, your OS, operating system, is what manages the computer's functions. This is what helps hardware and software all talk to each other. It coordinates tasks, manages when programs are given access to the CPU, how much memory they're allocated, and where in memory they're stored, and how files are stored on your hard drive or external media. System software, on the other hand, which does, again, include your operating system, but it also includes other tools like your firewall and general like device management tools, things that are necessary to have your computer operate properly. And most computers, you're very unlikely to find one that does not have an operating system of some kind pre-installed on it. And among those, it's usually going to be Windows, currently Windows 10, or it's going to be Mac OS 10. And like I said, this is some of the things that your operating system does. Starting and shutting down the computer. I'm not going to go too far into detail on how that works. Your book does, and you need to read up on that. But unless you're a computer science major, this isn't information you need to focus on. And I'll be honest with you, as a computer science major, I haven't felt the need to focus on it very much. All I know is that you have your firmware and your BIOS that live on a ROM chip that is handled by your CPU. Those are used to create a bootloader, brings in your operating system, etc., etc. That's really all you need to know. In the event that something goes wrong, you have some keywords to look at for, okay, what could the problem possibly be? Managing programs, like I said, giving them CPU time, giving them access to RAM or storage space. Configuring devices. I'm not going to go too far into detail on this either, because for the most part, configuring devices is just a matter of plugging it in and waiting a few minutes. A lot of things nowadays use USB, and when you plug in a new USB device, especially with Windows, it'll just go through an automated setup process, and you really don't have to do anything for the most part. And if you do, it's going to give you some on-screen instructions to follow, and it should all be really straightforward. Establishing network connections, either through Wi-Fi, Ethernet, or what have you. Monitoring performance. I'll get more into that in a minute. I'll go over Task Manager again. For those who missed last week and didn't check out the video, it could be something really helpful for you. File management is another thing. I'm going to go into detail on during the demonstration part of this lecture. Updating operating system software. This is generally your Windows update. You know, everybody gets annoyed by suddenly Windows is bringing in updates to your software and now it's slowing your computer down, but these are necessary. Oftentimes what these updates are doing is patching some sort of hole in the system security that was found. And so it's intended to protect your computer. So yeah, it's annoying, but you need it to stay safe online. Monitoring security, again, updates are a part of that, but also your firewall. And finally, network access. Again, that's your firewall, making sure that no one gets in that's not supposed to be in. No one can get into your computer without your permission. And more on that in a little while. Some important features, some terms you'll probably hear floated around. Graphical user interface, or GUI or GUI. This is pretty much what you see on your computer. This is windows, buttons, menus, images, videos, all of that good stuff. That is all part of your graphical user interface. Most techies are going to call it a GUI for short, because techies like to pronounce acronyms no matter how forced it might be. Utilities, this can be your file management, whether that's Windows Explorer or Finder on Mac. Software as a service. Now here's something more of a concept, or SaaS or SaaS, or however you want to pronounce that abbreviation. Software as a service is an idea that's been expanded on, especially in the last several years, where instead of buying a copy of a piece of software, you are instead presented with a subscription service where you install the software and you are given updates as long as you keep the bill paid. Adobe Premiere, a very expensive piece of software. Older versions of it cost like $1,000 to just buy up front, but now you can pay for a subscription for, last time I checked, it was about $75 a month. Windows itself is being delivered in the form of a software as a service, and some versions are paid. Generally for home users, there's no need to worry about a monthly or annual subscription fee for the time being, but if I recall, I could be wrong about this, Windows 10 Professional is subscription based. And something that you have probably heard referenced before is open source versus closed source. Some people use these terms in common language. And in terms of computers and technology, what it means, source refers to the code that was written for a program, whether that be in C or Java or Python or whatever other programming language, or any combination of languages. That is your source. Open source refers to the fact that the code is available to the public. You can read it, you can even modify it, and adjust it to your liking if you have the skills and the know-how. In some cases, with license agreements, you may be required to submit your changes back to the creator of the program. But in general, open source programs are free to use, free to modify. You just, might have to tell the creator what you've done. And closed source is the opposite. Most commercial software like Windows and Microsoft Office, these are closed source programs. The code is not available to you. You are not allowed to modify it, and so on and so forth. So one last thing before we get to the demonstration part of this is a look at some different types of operating systems. So first off, we've got our desktop systems, and we're all familiar with these. Windows has features like Cortana and OneDrive. You've got Microsoft Edge for the internet browsing. Mac OS is very similar, but it also has its differences, particularly in the UI design. It has Siri in place of Cortana and has built-in features for cloud storage. Moving on to Unix. This is a very basic, very lightweight operating system. Not a lot of home users take advantage of Unix, but a lot of operating systems that are made today are based on Unix. Linux is for what you might call power users, or people who just don't like Windows and Mac, these paid services. Linux is generally free. It is an open source operating system. I personally don't care for it much. I find it a little too technical. I know, odd for a computer science major. It's just a lot of messing around, in my opinion, for what you want to do. A lot of stuff has to be taken care of through the command prompt, which is just this blank terminal to enter sometimes very cryptic commands. Some people really like it because it's super lightweight, it's fast, and it's secure. I will always stick to Windows. And finally, Chrome OS, the bane of this class. We've mentioned it several times. It is based on the Google Chrome web browser, strangely enough. Another lightweight operating system, but not one that I've had much of any experience with. I don't even think I've seen people using it. And on the other side, those are more client-type operating systems, but you also have your server operating systems. Mac OS and Windows both have theirs, but most web servers, going back to what we talked about in week 2, most web servers are Unix-based simply because of their lightweight nature. They're very flexible, very powerful. Not a lot of machine resources, CPU time, RAM, all this other good stuff. Not a lot of it is being devoted to the operating system, so it can all go into the website itself, and it generally just makes accessing a site much faster and easier for the end user. And now going back to more client-type operating systems, every one of us in this class has a phone or a tablet, and odds are good it's either running Android or iOS. Android being a Linux-based operating system. You'll find it on most phones in some form. It is a Google-developed system, whereas iOS, naturally developed by Apple, and is pretty much only found on Apple products. So your iPhone, iPod, iPad. Does anybody even still use iPods? I don't know. I haven't seen an iPod in like 6 years, so I have no idea. But with that, we're moving away from what I want to talk about in the PowerPoint, because this last slide is just going to get us going on some things that I want to demonstrate to you guys. You all know what Windows menus and dialog boxes are. I want to get more into files with something of a more hands-on approach, as well as folders. And as for this entire section here is mostly things that we've already covered. So instead of repeating myself so much, I want to skip all of this. Let's get out of this PowerPoint. And we're going to take a look inside of the computer. I apologize that this is going to be a very Windows-focused demonstration. In general, whatever I show you here, for the most part, you should be able to find on Mac just as easily. But let's dive right into it. First thing I want to do is turn on magnifier and close out of PowerPoint. And before we move on to demonstration, does anybody have any questions? I see we've got something in conversation. We'll be able to stay in class. That's okay, no problem. If nobody else has any questions, we can dive right in. So the first thing I want to talk about is the taskbar down here. I've mentioned this. This just has quick access to tools and things that you might want to have at your disposal. For me, I keep my Mail, Chrome, Windows Magnifier, very handy accessibility tool. I keep this open. If you have low vision and don't want to spend hundreds of dollars on Zoom text, this is a great tool to use. Or if you just would rather see things closer up, if you're really nearsighted, this can help. And I keep Discord and my File Explorer, all of these at the ready at a moment's notice. You may have noticed that mine disappears after I move my mouse away from it. If you would like to do this, we can come here to Taskbar Settings. And we have this feature automatically hide the taskbar in desktop mode or tablet mode, depending on which kind of machine you're using. Will determine which one you use to hide it properly. I also use small taskbar buttons. The larger taskbar buttons, you have the option to show labels. All down here. I generally prefer just, nice, neat squares that tell me at a glance what the program is. And also from this menu, which I'll show you another way to access in just a moment. You can look at your backgrounds, your colors, lock screen, themes, just visual personalizations, things that you can change to just feel a little more at home with your device instead of relying on the default stuff. Fonts. In general, you won't need to mess with this menu, but I found that I had to in a couple situations. I have a whole host of fonts on my computer, some that you guys probably don't have. Let me show you a couple. So I've got various forms of Linux BioLinum and also Libertine. And the way that you install these fonts, you can either find fonts. Let me fly back up here. You can find fonts on the Microsoft Store, or if you have some downloaded, you can drag and drop them from your File Explorer onto this little box with the dotted line around it, and it will automatically install those fonts. So very easy. Just make sure that if they are in a compressed file, like a zip or a 7Z or a RAR file, that you have first pulled them out of that. I'll show you how to do that in just a little bit. But in general, they have to be uncompressed first before you can throw them into this. And so that's pretty much all you need to know for that menu. But let's come down all the way to the bottom right corner and click here to drop all of our windows down into the taskbar, except that one. And you have some options just by right-clicking in the empty space of your desktop. You can personalize, and this will take us back to this menu here. That's a much easier way to get to it than, you know, flipping through the taskbar settings and going here. And just so this is just a lot more straightforward. You can close that. Next is your display settings. You may have to mess around with these to get them to something you're comfortable with. Yes? Hello? Did you have a question? No? Okay. So when you first set up a device, you may have to mess around with display settings. And what this includes, you have nightlight is something that you will turn on after a certain period of time. You can come in here and you can set that. Or you can just turn it on immediately. You could set how strong it is, and this is generally just to make it easier on the eyes during the late hours. You can also scale things. I generally prefer to keep this at 100%. Anything else tends to throw off how things are laid out, from my experience at least. Screen resolution. You may have seen this somewhere along the line, and the way this works is it is, in short, the level of detail for your computer measured in pixels. So I've got mine set to 1920 by 1080, which is full high definition. And that is 1920 pixels wide by 1080 pixels high. And so you have other resolutions. You can go all the way down to something like, let's see how far this goes. The lowest one I have is 800 by 600. I'm not going to click on that because I don't want that messing up my computer, or at least messing up how I've got my display. You may have other options, like I have the option for 4K here, which is 3840 by 2160. My monitor does not support that. If your monitor does not support something that high, don't use it because it can be a massive drag on your computer's performance. Generally, Windows will point out to you which one is best for your display with just this recommended here. Landscape or portrait mode. Landscape being what it is now, what my screen is now, in 16:9 aspect ratio. Portrait is closer to 9:16. It is the vertical mode used by people to record videos when they don't know how to record videos. Just my opinion on that. And from this menu, you've also got your sound settings. You can change your input and output devices. I'm not even going to click on these because I don't want to risk a misclick that's going to completely mess up this lecture. You can adjust your volume here, or you can come down here, click this, and it'll bring up your volume for you. Your audio input, mine is currently set to my Yeti microphone. And to make sure that your microphone is working, you can come down here and see that it is indeed picking up your voice or whatever background audio you've got going on. And this can also be used to know if you're being too loud, because if you're routinely maxing out this meter here, it's going all the way up to the top. You should probably either be quieter or reduce your gain, because at the peak of this meter, you tend to get audible pops and crackles and other such things. That's called clipping. And clipping is bad. It's uncomfortable. And if I've ever caused any of that for you guys, then I am terribly sorry. I'm just naturally loud. Notifications and actions. generally you want to leave these alone. Windows 10 at least is going to have certain apps that will notify you of things. I've got all of these doing that. I've only turned off a few if they've been bothersome. Yeah, PowerPoint was one of them. I had to go in and manually turn that one off. For some reason, my MIDI synthesizer had the same issue. I don't know why it needs to throw notifications at me, but it did. Focus assist, I don't bother with this. Power and sleep. If you have a habit of leaving your computer on when you shouldn't, you can use these to mitigate the issue. You can set your timers. These are basically like the old sleep timers on TVs. You can set it anywhere from 2 minutes to 5 hours. Or I keep it at never because I'm pretty much always at my computer anyway. So if I get up for an extended period of time, coming back to my monitor being off or my computer having gone to sleep is just kind of annoying. And you have the same options for sleep. And just for those who don't know, mentioning sleep, the difference between sleep and shutdown. In sleep, some things are going to stay in RAM. It's going to preserve your volatile memory and generally make it much easier for you to get back to what you were doing when you come back to your computer. I generally put my computer to sleep when I go to bed. I don't shut it down unless it has an update to install, in which case I'll shut it down at the end of the day and then boot it up and let it finish. Whereas with shutting down, everything shuts off. Power is completely cut to the computer. Anything that was in RAM is now gone. Your fans completely stop. Your system is at zero. Coming down to power options, some computers, this is a set of radio buttons that you can choose. You might have optimized, balanced, high performance. For me, it's a slider. And I keep mine at maximum because I play probably too many video games. I dedicate most of my free time to gaming. So I keep mine at high performance. And usually at the bottom of these menus, you've got other options like this. I generally don't bother with these. If I have a question, I ask Google. Storage, view some things that view what you've got on your computer, generally. You're better off doing this in File Explorer. I don't have any reason to come into this menu at any time. Tablet mode, if you're using a desktop, this is unnecessary. Multitasking, I never use this. Projecting to the PC. Shared experience. This is for, I believe, yes. You can look at other devices, syncing things like your phone up to your computer, all kinds of options. I'm sure you've noticed a question of what can I change on my computer, and it's an easier question to ask what you can't change on your computer. Though generally, I wouldn't go messing around with all of this too much, because if you don't know what you're doing, you might make a change to a setting and not remember how to reverse the change. So be sure you know what you're doing before you go and start messing with your settings, because some of these could have a big impact on how your computer functions. And that goes double for the control panel. So if we come down here and we click the Start menu button, this little Windows icon, you can type in Control Panel. Eventually, it'll auto-complete it for you. And you can press Enter or click. And here is a menu for everything you can do to your computer. So say you wanted to remove a program from your computer. So I have typed in programs into this little search bar here, press enter. And this first option that pops up under programs and features is add or remove programs. If you install and uninstall a lot of programs on your computer, you're going to be using this menu a lot. And all this is it lists everything that's installed, and you can say, right click on this if you want it gone, and click on install. And that's the gist of what you're going to use that particular menu for. As far as other things on your control panel, if you use your computer enough, eventually you'll learn a bunch of those. I still haven't learned everything because I haven't needed to. But generally speaking, the control panel is a good place to come if you need to troubleshoot some problems and you would like to do it yourself, though I would start with a Google search and do some reading before you go messing with whatever's on your computer. I will quickly look at our time. We're doing well. The next thing I want to talk about is file management. Some of you may have only ever done, let me just save this to my documents. Let me just put this here on my desktop. I'm not too worried about where it is. Eventually, throughout your college studies, you're probably going to need to organize your files, and I'll show you how to do that. So you see here, this is my flash drive. I've got my game projects, games installers, my JSU folder, which is all class stuff, books, homework, whatever. Other is just random things, and then a folder for personal projects. So say I want to make a new folder. I right-click in some empty space in this big gray area, and I hover over New. And you have a whole load of options. But the one we're interested in is Folder. You click this, and we have New Folder, and we could say, call it Music. And of course, you can name it whatever you like, and you can store whatever you like, but naturally, this is how you can very easily store your stuff and organize it without losing things. I started doing this because I had a nasty habit of losing my homework when I was in undergrad. So keeping an organized system helped me quite a lot, as you can probably imagine. And to delete, you can either right-click and select delete down here, or what I prefer to do is click to highlight and press the delete key. This comes up and delete it. On the subject of deleted items, let me drop this down. I know I'm bouncing around a lot. There's a whole lot to cover today. When you delete items from your hard drive, they will typically go into the recycle bin. So you have this. This is a temporary holding spot for your files that you have deleted. You can choose to get rid of them forever by clicking the recycle bin tools, coming here, empty the bin, and it'll ask you if you want to permanently delete all these files. I do. And now they're gone. When you delete something normally from your hard drive, it does not clear the space. It just goes into this folder where you can then delete it forever. Coming back here, say we want to extract a file. I have a whole bunch of stuff. Let's look at my ACM fonts folder. Well, it'd be nice if right-clicking would highlight it. Thank you. If you have, I have WinRAR installed. If you have that, you can use it to extract your files. If you don't, then provided it's a zip file, you will just have a Windows option to extract. If you choose extract files through WinRAR, it will ask you where you want to do it. Extract here, we'll just do it right there. Let's just extract. A little menu will come up, and then here down at the bottom will be your ACM fonts folder that has been pulled out of the archive. There's a bunch of different file formats for zip files. You've also got 7Z, RAR. I'm trying to think of others dead offhand. Those are the main ones you're going to see. Common ones, you may see a .tar file, what some will call a tarball. That's more for Linux users, but you may run across such a file as a Mac or Windows user. You can also view the properties of your file. If you hover over it with your mouse, generally you'll see some basic stuff. But what if you want more? Come down here and we click Properties. And this menu will generally have a whole slew of things that you can look at. You've got your general information, which is almost always going to show this little number here, something like this, a dot something. This is a file extension. It has no bearing on the exact contents of a file. What a file extension will do is tell your computer how that file is read. So say it's a .exe. Well, we know to load that straight into RAM and run the file, run the program. docx, you've seen. That is a Microsoft Word document file. docx specifically is 2010 onward versions of Microsoft Word. You've also got XLSX, which is for your Excel spreadsheets, and PPTX for PowerPoints. Versions of Office before 2010 just didn't have that X at the end, so it would be just Doc, XLS, and PPT. And of course, your new versions of Office can run those just fine. It's just that the X versions of these file extensions have more features and generally perform better. Some other examples of file extensions: JS, this is a JavaScript code file. You may, as a Windows user, see MSI files. These are installation files specifically for Windows, if I recall. Yeah, Windows install package. Would help if I would read right there. You may also come across image files. Those are your JPEGs, PNGs, GIF/GIF, however you pronounce it. There would be way too many file extensions for us to go over in one class. You can look up lists on Google and they will tell you all kinds of information, more than you need to know. But each one just tells your computer what program needs to be run for this file and how to do it. And so, yeah, that more or less covers it. You've seen that folders can contain other folders. All the folders are is just a directory system. So like you go into a library, you might have to go to a particular floor and a particular section, a shelf number, and that's where you'll find the book that you want. And the folders in your computer work pretty much the same way as that, only instead of books, you have pretty much anything that can be stored digitally. You also have a search feature that I find does not work reliably. So we have, say, give me a minute. Let me think. I don't know why it's showing me sticky keys and other stuff in here when I've never searched for files like that. But let's say I want it to look for notes. See if I have a file called that. Press enter once you've entered your notes or your search term, and we have a lecture notes folder. And that's the gist of it. Sometimes this can be really, really slow, especially if you're searching through, say, your C drive, because this is pretty much searching everything that's on your computer. And that can take, I've had it take half an hour to find something. So do I recommend using this search feature here? Only if you already know where you need to be. If you know like the general area, otherwise, no, don't bother. You'll just end up wasting a lot of your time. And so one final thing that I want to cover, we've got 15 minutes left, but one final thing I want to cover, this is more for CS majors and CIS majors. It's environment variables. If you are in CS or CIS, computer science, computer information systems, you need to know how to use this. So what you do is you come into environment, you select edit the system environment variables, pardon me, and it will bring up this menu here. You do not need any of this. What you need is this button right here. It will take you into this menu. Do not go messing around with this unless you know exactly what you need to do. And for some of your classes, your professors are going to tell you what you need to do. If you go fiddling with these, you can completely mess up how your computer handles programs. In general, the path is what you're going to be editing in your later classes. So you click on path, highlighted in blue, you click edit, and you come down and you get all of these here. And what these do is tell your computer, okay, when we load a file that is a format associated with this program, say we click on a Java file, what we want to do then is look for JRE. That's what I have right here. And I had to put this in manually. Actually, I had to do manual environment variables for all of these from JDK down. And so knowing how to do these is going to be a powerful tool for you as a software developer. So just keep it in mind. And when you've made changes and you're happy with the way they are, you click OK. I'm going to click cancel. I'm going to click cancel again, and I'm going to click it one last time because I didn't make any changes. I don't want to risk any oversights going through. I did forget about desktop shortcuts, but that's really quick. We all know what they do. You double click on them and they bring up your file or program or whatever it happens to be. So say I wanted to make something a desktop shortcut. Let's just flip through here and see what options we have. Let's say one of the lecture recordings that we have here. So say I want to do this. I right click it and I use the send to button. You have a few options here. I don't understand why you'd want to send it to a Bluetooth device, maybe for phone syncing. I don't use Bluetooth. I find that it does weird things to my computer, so I just don't. You can send it straight to your documents folder. You can send it to an external device. But for what we're talking about right now, we want to go to this, Desktop Create Shortcut. You click on that. You saw a minute ago that we have a compressed zipped folder. That's how you send things into a compressed file. That's one of your options, the default Windows option. So let's drop this. And now you'll see we have this file here. This is not a copy of the file. This is just a marker. It's like a link on a website. So if we double click this, I'm not going to, but if you double click it, it'll just load the video and start playing it. And of course, if you want to get rid of it, you can right-click and select the delete option, or press the delete key.